Week 3 Viva. What does the Council of Jerusalem tell us about the early church? We often think that the Christians of the early church all thought exactly the same thing and had no points of contention. However, the conflicts addressed at the Council of Jerusalem can teach us a lot about the formation of the church. My first point is that there was conflict between the Pauline and Jerusalem branches of the church. Secondly, the God-fearer sect of Jerusalem had become a major source of converts to Christianity. And thirdly, the church was willing to make major theological decisions at councils. My first point is that there was conflict between the Pauline and Jerusalem branches of the church as regards to whether or not the Gentile converts should conform to all the rules and customs of Judaism. The Council of Jerusalem was called after some men from Judea, who were presumably followers of James, came down and were teaching that unless you were circumcised, you cannot be saved. This obviously opposed what Paul teaches, which is that salvation is by faith alone, by grace alone, and Paul was very mad when he heard about these people's, when he heard about James's position, and when he saw how Peter kept flip-flopping in regarding to his action towards the Gentiles, because Peter, after he saw his vision, at first he went and dined with the Gentiles, and then later when he was with James in Jerusalem, he dined separately from them. Paul even called the leaders of the church in Jerusalem sham Christians. So, a council of church leaders was called in Jerusalem. After much debate, they reached a compromise, and Peter declared that they should not force the Gentiles to convert to Judaism before Christianity, saying that there should be no, quote, placing a yoke on the neck of the Gentile disciples that neither our fathers nor we have had to bear, unquote. This is from Acts 15, verse 10. Peter decided this after seeing how the Holy Spirit had descended on the Gentile believers the same as on the Jewish converts. At the council, they also made the decision to compromise by dividing the missionary territory and sending Paul and Barnabas as missionaries to the Gentiles, and they were allowed to convert them however they would, and they were not forced to make them follow all the rules of Judaism. My second point is that the God-fearer sect of Judaism had become a major source of converts to Christianity. At the time of the Jerusalem Council, the manner of the conversions of these God-fearers had yet to be decided. The term God-fearer refers to a diverse group of people who were not ethnically Jewish but had reverence for the Jewish God. In general, God-fearers were interested in Judaism and often attended the synagogue, but many of them were wealthy, so they would give alms, but they did not fully understand or embrace the law. Many of these God-fearers believed in the God of the Old Testament because it was trendy and foreign, so they kind of like, this Jewish thing's kind of cool, why don't I just study it or something? But they really didn't understand Judaism, or Christianity for that matter. When Paul would preach at the synagogues, the God-fearers made up a large part of his audience. According to Acts 13, when Paul and Barnabas were in Antioch, Paul addresses the people of the synagogue saying, quote, brothers, sons of the family of Abraham and God-fearers, to us has been sent the message of this salvation. Unquote. Thus, many God-fearers accepted this message of salvation. But it was still a matter of contention whether or not these converts to Christianity should be made to fully convert to Judaism first, and in particular the keeping of the law of Moses. It was decided by James at the council that these Gentiles could join the church after only accepting the Noahide laws, which were pre-Mosaic and universal, and thus they applied to everyone. Thus they were more applicable to the God-fearers. The Noahide laws were: first, do not deny God; secondly, do not blaspheme God; thirdly, do not murder; fourth, do not engage in illicit relations; fifth, do not steal; sixth, do not eat from a living animal; and seventh, to establish a legal system in accordance with the above laws. Thus, another compromise was reached when both the Jerusalem and the Antioch churches could preach the gospel to all who would listen. The circumcision would be obligatory only to the Jews, and the gospel of uncircumcision, preached by Paul, would apply to the Gentiles. My third point is that the church was willing to make major theological decisions at the Council of Jerusalem. This helped form the structure and tradition that the church has used throughout the centuries to make decisions. So what is a church council? Church councils are formal meetings of church leaders and representatives brought together to regulate points of doctrine or discipline. The Council of Jerusalem was the first church council. It was needed because during Jesus' ministry on earth, he could basically just settle all the theological debates himself, despite how confusing some of his answers might be. Nonetheless, after his ascension, the believers had to work out how they were going to make decisions. At this crucial moment in the early church, the leaders decided to have various church factions meet together to discuss the issue. Instead of dividing the church, the early leadership elected to pray together, discuss their differences, and work out a solution. Doing this, they decided to use a democratic model, which has remained a part of church tradition to this day. This also created precedent for other important church councils, such as the Council of Nicaea. Paul Johnson says, quote, "The Council of Jerusalem is the first political act in the history of Christianity." Thank you.